Welcome back, Knuckleheads. I am Lupine Fiasco, and this is Daily FaB Gameplay. For anyone who's new to the channel, welcome to the jungle. What we do here is review replays of games that I played on the Talishar client days or weeks ago, after enough time has passed, that I lose my bias and can more objectively judge the quality of my play. I will talk through turn cycles and give my thoughts on the line I would take now, compared to the line I took then at the time of recording. We either reinforce good play patterns or identify areas for improvement for the purpose of tightening and improving our gameplay in the future to take down paper events like the upcoming Skirmish and ProQuest season, and, most importantly, walk away with that shiny cardboard. If you'd like to check out the list I'm playing here or try it for yourself on Talishar, there is a FaB deck link in the video description below. While you're down there, if you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. It is the best free way to support me and to make sure that you see daily FaB gameplay in your video feed 5 days a week. The best paid way to support me is through Patreon, and a Patreon link is also in the video description. A Patreon subscription will get you access to the DFG Discord and the shiny cardboard Talishar card back. At higher tiers, your name will appear in every DFG video, and you could receive bonus DFG content every week. Daily FaB gameplay will always be free 5 days a week, so those who can afford to patronize me, I truly appreciate it. I also now am on X, and if you would like to see memes, inane comments, and the occasional self-promotion, head on over to X and follow Lupine Fiasco. Now, without further ado, let's talk about our sideboard and about our game plan. We would prefer to go second against Uzuri if we could, just as we would against every assassin that lets us block out daggers, random damage on turn 0 with any 3 blocks from our hand. Uzuri is special among the assassins because of how she can play and isolate, and then Uzuri effect. Something with more power in shakedown, surgical extraction are not very relevant on turn 0, but something like a death touch could give you inertia on turn 0 to screw up any kind of setup play, blood rot pox, just an extra 2 damage. So more than other assassins, it is important to block against Uzuri on turn 0. If you do get to go second, block the daggers, block the isolates, just try and convert cards in your hand to defense because of any sort of dominate trickery that might prevent you from converting your extraneous cards to damage prevention, and who knows how that damage is going to catch up with you at the end of the game. As far as what we're reporting out, we are cutting send packing from this matchup. The reason being that Uzuri plays a lot of defense reactions, and that Uzuri is comfortable playing off of 2 cards. So Uzuri can put 6 block from hand in front of a send packing, and then either pitch a blue to attack with a Command and Conquer, or a Death Touch, or a Shakedown, or she could play a stealth attack, then use her Uzuri effect to swap in CNC, Shakedown, Death Touch, etc. And if send packing is not forcing the opposing hero to do anything that they don't already want to do, then it is just an overcosted 6 power attack. And we would prefer to cut for yellow pulping. That being said, Uzuri plays a lot of defense reactions, and so your yellow pulpings may not be the best choice for this matchup. I am looking into what I want to do with my yellow pulpings in the future. If you do decide to play safe against a assassin who can get away with playing defense reactions, your send packing may just be good enough, and if you are playing 2-card hands, send packing is a disruptive 3 for 7 if you have that might token. And we do want to play 2-card hands against Uzuri because we can outvalue her with our Bear Fangs, our Swing Bigs. Even our Pulpings or Wild Rides are going to generate a 7th point of value compared to what Uzuri can do with Command and Conquer, Shakedown, if the disruption is not going through. That is contrasted from new. Against new, we really don't want to block because we're expecting Nu to take cards from our hand, whether we give them to her willingly. But against Uzuri, who plays far fewer reactions and who can't play Siren's Call, we are in a pretty good position to block. If Uzuri plays a Surgical Extraction with a card in hand, we know that it isn't Siren's Call, Hiss, Venomous Bite, and we are comfortable putting 4 block in front of that Surgical Extraction. Or if Uzuri attacks with Command and Conquer, she's running Flick Knives, and you can block CNC for 6 and not need to worry about a Rousing Wave making it 7. So we can block Uzuri, and usually we will, and we can do so pretty confidently that if we put 6 block in front of a 6 power attack, it won't become more than 6. We don't play defense reactions, so Flick Knives from Uzuri does not affect our existing blocks. If you block with 4 points of armor, Uzuri cannot flick a Scale Peeler at you to make your current armor block 4 less. She can't do that to affect future blocks with armor, but she has no real trickery outside of Shred to impact your current block values, and we're going to abuse that with 2-card hands. We will go above Uzuri's rate. We can trade life totals back and forth pretty easily, then look to convert a Scowling Flesh Bag and the rest of our equipment into blocking out Command and Conquer, Leave No Witnesses, Surgical Extraction, when we want to fire off a big Blood Rush turn. With that all being said, let's stop wasting time. We'll just jump into the game. Having lost the die roll, we do now have to go first, which does put us in a worse position. Thankfully, we have an agile windup that says we get to set up on this turn and don't need to let Uzuri filter if we don't want to. That being said, this hand is not very good. If we discard our agile windup, we make Might and Agility, then we can pass the turn. But Smash Instinct and Beast Within are both, pretty bad in the arsenal. Clash of Might is a 2 for 6, but it isn't one of our better 2 for 6s. In fact, we play it in the deck specifically to use it not in the arsenal. So the question is, do we want to let Uzuri filter? And I believe the answer is no. If we maybe attack with Beast Within, or pitch blue to attack with Mandible Claw, and then discard Agile Windup, we are giving Uzuri the ability to block with Command and Conquer, Surgical Extraction, Leave No Witnesses, Shakedown, which is stacking her graveyard for an eventual Codex of Frailty. It also increases the chance that if she did not draw any disruption in this opening hand, that she gets to filter and potentially draw into it for her first turn. And now, because we've gone first, we arsenal a card. Her CNC, her Leave No Witnesses, is on. So if she doesn't already have that card, we don't want to give her the opportunity to draw into it, which says we are just going to discard Windup, we're going to pass the turn, we're going to arsenal Clash of Agility, and just be okay with being able to play a 2 for 6 out of arsenal and give it go again. Draw into Wild Ride and Clash of Might. We can talk about what we would ideally like to do with this hand. Playing Clash of Might from Arsenal by pitching Smash Instinct is 7 power with Go again, and we float a resource. From there, we can pitch our Clash of Might to attack with Wild Ride. We'll draw a card and have a 50% chance to discard Beast Within, which would draw us a second card if we don't discard the Beast Within. We do have an action point, and we can pitch our Beast Within to attack with Mandible Claw. And with all of that being the case, I really don't want to block with this hand. Certainly not give a full card to block a Scale Peeler. We also see Uzuri pitch a yellow Isolate to attack with the Scale Peeler, which tells me that she isn't floating resources. This isn't like she can't pitch 2 blues to Dagger Command and Conquer Arsenal. This is her turning a full card into a Scale Peeler. So I really don't want to block this. I don't anticipate much coming as a follow-up to the daggers. Here we have Uzuri pitching another yellow to attack with Spider's Bite. Spider's Bite is a little more threatening because our hand will not block very well if the follow-up to Dagger Dagger is Pitch a Blue for Command and Conquer. We would not adequately be able to protect our arsenal. The thing is, our arsenal isn't very good. It's a Clash of Might. We are totally fine letting that Clash of Might get blown up by a CNC. It means Uzuri does not get an arsenal, and our hand is still perfectly playable if we don't have our Clash of Might in arsenal. We just pitch a blue, attack with Wild Ride, float a resource, see what the follow-up is. So I'm not going to block the Spider's Bite either. I'm going to take an extra point of damage, and I'm just going to see what comes next. What comes next is Uzuri passing the turn, arsenaling a card, and then drawing back up. So let's just briefly talk about what we think that means. It means that Uzuri does not have a 1-cost attack. She could not, say, pitch a red to attack with Looking for Scrap. We know that she didn't have blues in her hand because she didn't pitch them to Dagger Dagger. So either Uzuri maybe has 2 Command and Conquers, 2 Shakedowns, some combination of 2 2-cost reds, which doesn't make much sense because she could have overpitched to attack with a dagger just to not take an intellect penalty. Or what I suspect it means, what I suspect it is more likely to mean is that she has 2 defense reactions. If she had 2 Sync Blows and wants to make sure she's getting the most value for her cards, then she will just keep 2 1-card 4s going into our turn where we are going to do some attacking. It also just reinforces my point about not giving Uzuri the opportunity to filter on turn 0. If we had attacked with that Beast Within just to get it out of our hand, Uzuri gets to filter some of those D-reacts out of her hand and potentially draw into more action. Her first turn was absolutely terrible. Turning the going second advantage into 2 damage is fantastic for us. But back to the turn at hand, we do have our agility giving us go again. We are going to take the line that I had described of playing Clash of Might from Arsenal. We can follow up with Wild Ride, pitching Clash of Might from hand, and hoping to discard our Beast Within. The worst case scenario from that line is that Wild Ride draws us a red, then Beast Within draws us a second red, and we just pitch 2 reds to attack with Mandible Claw, at which point we did our same Clash of Might Wild Ride Claw line, but took an extra point of damage to do it. The upside, of course, being that we draw a red and a yellow or a blue, and get to fire off 6 more damage. We do get the first defense reaction from Uzuri. Let's see how good we are at Flesh and Blood. We're pretty bad at it. Draw, discard, pulping is not where we want to be. We do get a second defense reaction of Uzuri, more or less confirming what I had thought, that she just has 2 D-reacts. Her opening hand, not good. Isolate, Codex of Frailty, D-react. That's fantastic. We didn't give her the chance to filter. So we do Mandible Claw, and we will just pass the turn back to her. 5-point life lead, Uzuri looking at 3 cards in hand. We get a Bonds of Agony out of Uzuri. Taking a look at Uzuri's reaction suite, even just on the table, she can trigger Bonds of Agony. She can Flick Knives, Black Tech Whisperers, and Uzuri reaction. The Uzuri reaction will cost her a card from hand, but she does not need to then replace Bonds of Agony with the banished card. So Uzuri would be going down a card in hand, but in exchange, she would bump the Bonds of Agony up to 4. If Uzuri had something like Justinic to replace Flick Knives, then we are taking 9. So there are a lot of options that Uzuri has for how she's going to turn this Bonds of Agony on. The first thing that tells me is she can do it. Even just on the table, she can turn Bonds of Agony on. So I'm either going to commit armor to stopping the bonds, or I'm going to block with Blood Rush Bellow. because if I block with Blood Rush Bellow and Bonds hits me, Blood Rush is no longer in my hand. Uzuri does not have the opportunity to banish all of the Blood Rushes left in my deck. So we're either blocking with armor or we are blocking with Blood Rush. The other thing to consider is if we block with Blood Rush and Uzuri buffs up the Bonds, hits us, we always have a 2-card play. Without Blood Rush, we can pitch Yellow Pulping to play Bear Fangs. We can play Enlightened Strike by bottoming Pulping or Bear Fangs, whichever one we have left. If Uzuri takes our Pulping, we E-Strike. So we always have a 2-card play here, which makes me feel good about blocking with Blood Rush just to get rid of it. The alternate line we have, if we were really committed to keeping these 4 cards, we could block with Sash and Fleshbag. That isn't true. We could block with Fleshbag and Scabskin Leathers. I do want to play around Shred and not give Uzuri the opportunity to shred my Savage Sash. The Fleshbag banishes a card. Uzuri can no longer Uzuri react and play Just a Nick from hand, which means that either she has to keep an attack reaction in hand and Flick Knives and Black Tech, or she can only get the Bonds up to 4. It seems very risky, considering that if this Bonds hits us, we lose our Blood Rush Bellow. If we lose the 50% and Uzuri keeps Just a Nick or Shred, we lose a lot of action in this game. So I am just going to block with Blood Rush here and feel good about having a solid 2-card hand, regardless of what Uzuri banishes. Okay, so we see that she did have the Just a Nick, so she has lost a card from hand. Uzuri does get to buff Bonds up to 9, but in exchange does not have an arsenal. So not the worst thing. We lose a bunch of Pulpings, but as we've seen, Uzuri is on at least 6 defense reactions and has potentially 4 of them left. So losing Pulping, really not the worst thing in the world to have happened to us. We also lose a Run Roughshod off the top of our deck to Just a Nick, but overall, Uzuri has broken Black Tech Whisperers to get no value. We get to throw 8 damage back, and we're still feeling like we're in a good position in this game. We have all of our armor. We're not doing bad at all. We get 5 points of damage over the top of Leave No Witnesses. We've now taken a Leave No Witness from Uzuri. Yes, she is filling the yard for Codex of Frailty, but that's still fine. Uzuri throws Command and Conquer at us. We have 2 blues in hand, 2 Wild Rides. We are not excited about blocking the CNC. We are going to intend to play a Wild Ride, pitch a blue, see what we draw, discard, but if we play a Wild Ride, pitch a blue, and our hand remains the same, we get to follow up with Mandible Claw Wild Ride, and that's just a solid 14 damage hand that makes a Might on the back end. We're not going to block the Command and Conquer from hand. We are also not going to block with armor. We did see Uzuri just pitch a Shred. CNC, of course, not an assassin attack, so Uzuri could not Shred even if she wanted to, but we are just going to save this armor for when we need to block a CNC that actually is live or a Leave No Witnesses that is live. Taking 6 damage here puts us at a 2 life deficit, but we are intending to crack back for 14. Wild Ride does in fact leave us with the same hand that we started the turn with. Having Command and Conquer instead of yellow Wild Ride would be really, really sick, but not meant to be. We still are going to Mandible Claw Wild Ride. There is a line where we Mandible Claw pass and keep a Wild Ride in our arsenal to play around Codex of Frailty, considering that Uzuri has just blocked with Leave No Witnesses and CNC. But I don't really love leaving 5 damage on the table if we just pass the turn. There is value to it, considering that Uzuri has been blocking pretty aggressively if we think she is just going to play a 2-card hand. But I feel like this is leaving too much damage on the table. And if Uzuri's line is Dagger Codex for CNC, that's fine. I would have to check my graveyard. I believe there is no beast within in my graveyard. Never mind. Staring down and isolate. We could block with our flesh bag if we just wanted to totally blank this isolate. Uzuri would not have the opportunity to react before our flesh bag effect happens. So we are just converting our flesh bag into 2 block, plus Uzuri takes an intellect penalty. But we want to consider what our turn looks like without an arsenal. If this card in Uzuri's hand is Leave No Witnesses or Command and Conquer, we play Wild Ride, we pitch our Wrecker Romp. At minimum, our follow-up is Pack Hunt or Pulping. At maximum, we get a Mandible Claw, followed by Pack Hunt or Pulping. Solid 4-card hand. If we get shaken down, then we probably lose a red. And at that point, our turn is still Wild Ride, followed by Wild Ride or Pulping at minimum, with a Claw at maximum. So I don't want to block this, and I don't want to burn the flesh bag on it. We have a really good 4-card hand, regardless of what Uzuri reacts onto the combat chain. So I just want to save flesh bag for when I actually need all 5 of my cards. Worth noting, had we attacked with this Wild Ride in our arsenal, there is very little that Uzuri can do to affect our turn. If she reacts Command and Conquer or Leave No Witnesses, we have a solid 4-card hand. If she reacts Shakedown onto the chain, we have a solid 3-card hand. I would be a lot less concerned with what Uzuri is going to do if I didn't have an arsenal. Also, talking about blocking with armor, just to potentially set up for a 5-card Sash turn without Blood Rush. We've got Go Again in Arsenal and Go Again in hand that we could put 4 links on the chain. Without knowing what this card in Uzuri's arsenal is, I want to play around Shred, considering that my 4-card hand is still really good. We're pretty confident that Uzuri is never going to arsenal a Shred against a Kayo, because Kayo is blocking so infrequently. The Shred has such a high likelihood of getting stranded in arsenal, but Kayo does have the armor suite that says he is going to block at some point. So let's play around the Shred when we have the opportunity to do so. Death Touch, going to hit us for 6 and give us a Bloodrot Pox. Absolutely fine. I don't want to break my Sash here because I haven't blocked with it yet. I want to extract that full value. And I also feel confident that I am going to get to convert 5 cards to offense, or at least 4 cards with an arsenal. So not overly concerned about getting additional value. We are also expecting that because we get to arsenal one of these cards, the Sash is only really converting to 3 more value, because we get to work a Claw into our turn, or a Pulping, a Wild Ride. And I want to save the Sash for when it gets more value, more than just 3. How do we want to follow up this Wild Ride? I would like to follow it up with a second Wild Ride. No, I suppose that doesn't really matter. No, I do want to Mandible Claw Pack Hunt. We are 1 resource short of being able to arsenal a card here, which is a shame. Which says that Sash this turn would have been worth 6 points of damage, or 5 points of damage, because we would also get to Wild Ride this turn. So potentially bad to not break Sash, though because we didn't block with it, we take 2 points of value off whatever this turn is. I think it's fine. As I recall, I miscounted resources on this turn. and thought that I would be able to pack hunt and arsenal a wild ride, but I still agree with not having blocked with Sash previously and not using Sash now. There is also no world where I pitch the wild ride to Bloodrot Pox and then arsenal the pack hunt. I would rather just attack with the pack hunt. Looking at a persuasive prognosis, trying to decide what do we want to do with this? We definitely want to block it. That said, our hand has a card of each color, so we are always going to lose something to the prognosis. At the same time, we have a very good 2-card hand regardless of what prognosis takes. If it takes a blue, we get to pitch a Pulping to Bare Fangs. If it takes a red, we get to pitch a Assault and Battery to Clash of Might and then arsenal a Pulping. If it takes the yellow, we pitch our blue, attack with a Bare Fangs. So getting hit by prognosis here really isn't the worst thing in the world, with that being the case. And because we want to play a 2-card hand, what we might want to do here is block with Clash of Might. That plays around Justinic and Arsenal. We could block this with Fleshbag if we thought Uzuri had a reaction in hand and maybe a D-React or something, Command and Conquer, Leave No Witnesses in Arsenal. But this 4-card hand is not great. We're pitching blue to attack with Pulping, hoping that Uzuri does not have the D-React. At that point, we would hope to discard Clash of Might and keep blue to claw Bare Fangs. It's a fine 4-card hand, but it isn't a 4-card hand that I'm really dying to burn Fleshbag to protect, especially when I could get Clash of Might value and then follow that with Bare Fangs, also forcing Uzuri to have the reaction. So I like blocking with Clash of Might here. We make a Might, and then regardless of what Uzuri does, we get a solid 2-card hand. Problem is, if we reveal Blood Rush Bellow, then we lose our Might, we give it to Uzuri, and we are also now losing a Blood Rush Bellow to Justinic, and potentially something else to Persuasive Prognosis. We do lose a yellow Wild Ride as well, which takes our yellow Pulping, that's fine. We get our 2-card Bare Fangs, which now has a higher chance of making us a Might because we've lost a Blood Rush. But, keeping in mind, hey, if we had blocked with Fleshbag, that would have been solid. The Justinic turn wouldn't happen. That said, we have no way of knowing. Maybe our Pulping would have discarded our Blood Rush Bellow, and then we would have been in a worse spot. Even so, we are now just down 4 points of life to Uzuri. We get to Bare Fangs for 9, and we still have all of our armor. Questionable lines did not have blocked with Fleshbag up until this point, but we're still feeling pretty good about this game. We are in a good position. Uzuri has burned her black tech. She does not have any silver. Defense reaction coming out of Arsenal would have potentially stuffed that Pulping. You can definitely call it hindsight bias that, hey, everything kind of worked out based on what Uzuri has played from Arsenal, based on what's come off the top of our deck. But at a certain point, if you are playing towards these 2-card hands, rather than burning equipment for 4-card hands, sometimes that does put you in good positions. We have a Scale Peeler here coming in for 2 if we're trying to anticipate what could be coming next. Uzuri has pitched a Codex of Frailty, but we have yet to see a 2nd or 3rd Codex. With 2 cards in hand, Uzuri can definitely pitch to Spider's Bite, then play a Codex to get back CNC or Leave No Witnesses, which we would want to use armor to block. And because I want to start converting my armor into blocking disruption, that means I need to block this Scale Peeler. Our turn really looking like it's going to be pitch a blue, play pack hunt, discard Agile Windup to make Might and Agility. Solid 3-card hand that sets us up for our next turn, which means that one of these blues is extraneous. So I am going to block the Scale Peeler with probably Smash Instinct is the blue to block with if I'm anticipating what I'm going to need in the late game. Ultimately, I don't think it matters very much, but I do like blocking the Scale Peeler here to just put us in a position where we get to use armor to block Codex Leave No Witnesses or Codex CNC. We do have the Leave No Witnesses follow-up without having an arsenal, and with Leave No Witnesses not being able to affect our hand in any way, we just take 4 here, we lose a card off the top of our deck, and then we get to Pack Hunt for 7, discarding Agile Windup. We are nearing the point where we need to start using our armor just to block some damage to get value from our armor regardless of whether we're covering an on-hit. With Uzuri having Flick Knives, we are effectively at 8 life right now, ignoring all of our armor. The armor buffs us up to a much higher life total, but it is important to note the reach that Flick Knives gives to Uzuri. We have a Shakedown coming in for 6. There is the potential of Shred. Shakedown is a assassin attack action, so if this is a Shred in Uzuri's arsenal, then she is impervious to Flesh Bag. But if it isn't a Shred, if we are anticipating that Uzuri would never arsenal a Shred against a Kayo, then we feel a little better about blocking Shakedown with Temper Armor. The hand that we have here is really not an incredible 4-card hand. We have Command and Conquer for 7 go again, which is great. And then the follow-up is Agile Windup for 6. We just pitch 2 blues to pay for 5 resources. It barely threatens lethal. Really is not something that I want to sacrifice a lot of armor for, but I do want to make sure that we don't get hit by the Shakedown. Command and Conquer is our best play, and Uzuri is likely to call red, unless she really wants to put us on Blood Rush Bellow, and if she calls yellow, that's bad for us too. We lose our Agile Windup, and at that point our play is CNC for 7 go again, either pitch Riled Up to attack with Mandible Claw or arsenal it. So what I want to do here is block with Flesh Bag, Bone Breaker, and Wrecker Romp. That line generates an extra might. Command and Conquer now attacks for 8, which is extremely important. It means that Uzuri can't cover the CNC with 2 3 blocks and a Tunic or Flick Knives. She would have to give us 3 cards from hand, or 2 cards from hand and Flick Knives and Tunic. We are also flesh bagging to play around the Shred from hand, which I think is an important thing to do. I think we can play, we can assume that Uzuri doesn't have the Shred in arsenal, but we need to play around it in hand. Make our might, we intimidate a card. We do not get punished by Shred, and we are now going to CNC for 8, discard Windup to make might and agility. It's unfortunate that we are burning the agility we already had, but I think the best way to use our Windup is to generate those resources for our next turn, might and agility, rather than just throwing Claw for 3. CNC hitting CNC from Uzuri's arsenal. The hand we draw into is weirdly fine. We would love to have a blue in here. We would love if this Agile Windup was blue so that we could look at blocking with Swing Big and then playing Blood Rush, discarding Beast Within, floating 2 resources. But if we only get to do that and float 1 resource by pitching Yellow Windup, that's fine too. Of note, we see Uzuri pitch Red Shred, so maybe we did correctly anticipate on the last turn that she had a Shred in hand to get the Shakedown effect in. Regardless, we have a looking for scrap now attacking for 5 with go again. Uzuri has a card in hand. We have yet to see a Codex be played. It is turn 8. We are thinking that Uzuri could follow the looking for scrap with Codex for Leave No Witnesses. We are also anticipating that this looking for scrap is going to react with a flicked scale peeler, which means that our armor blocks less. So, with that being the case, we have a real choice here. If Uzuri plays the Codex of Frailty, we discard our Beast Within. We replace it, and probably we could put a Wild Ride into our arsenal so that we can set up go again, which is then asking, well, do we want to block with our armor now for full value, or do we want to commit to taking 6 from looking for scrap scale peeler, then block the Leave No Witnesses with Swing Big and Scab Skin Leathers? And I think we are better off just blocking the looking for scrap for 4, letting Uzuri break the chain with Codex of Frailty, and then having the option of blocking with the armor again. If she doesn't flick Scale Peeler at us, Scab Skin Leathers and Swing Big just cover Leave No Witnesses. So I like blocking for 4 here. We take 1 down to 9, potentially 2 down to 8, and then Leave No Witnesses puts us down to 4 and still gives us plenty of life to maybe take an extra hit, certainly to discard Beast Within. Uzuri does flick the Scale Peeler, does play the Codex, does grab Leave No Witnesses. We are going to discard Beast Within and replace it. We'll take a point of damage. So between the damage that we take from Beast Within and Leave No Witnesses, we'll be at 3. Because our armor all now blocks for 0, we would have to give 2 cards from hand to stop the Leave No Witnesses, which we don't want to do because we would not be able to play our Blood Rush, which we are actively interested in doing. We want to 4-card Blood Rush here with Might and Agility. So, that all being said, we're not going to block the Leave No Witnesses. And because we're not going to block the Leave No Witnesses, we want to grab something that isn't a red so that Uzuri does not make a silver. I think it's always worth grabbing something playable. Just in the weird instant, 0.01% of the time when Uzuri just doesn't play the Leave No Witnesses, just takes an intellect penalty. Basically don't grab a Wrecker Romp here just to she's going to banish something useless to the Leave No Witnesses. We're going to grab a yellow Wild Ride. We're just going to put Uzuri into a position where, for whatever reason she holds the Leave No Witnesses, that she's actually punished for doing so. Yellow Wild Ride doesn't give Uzuri the silver, and that's also just a good card to play if Uzuri lets us keep it. Drawing into Run Roughshod here is incredible. We get to pitch a blue to play our Blood Rush Bellow. We are hoping that we discard our Agile Windup and get to keep Swing Big, but even if we discard Swing Big, Agile Windup still a reasonable enough play. We go down to 3. We have Uzuri at 7. We have Might and Agility. We're feeling really good. We're feeling even better now that Blood Rush did not discard Swing Big. And we draw into 2 blues, which is not our best line, but we do get to play out all 3 of these cards. Riled Up now attacks for 6 because we have discarded a card with 6 or more power. The effect is active. So between Riled Up costing 2 under Sash, Claw costing 2, and Swing Big costing 1, we break Sash, we pitch an Agile Windup, and we get to attack with Riled Up for 9 go again, Mandible Claw for 4 go again because we are frail, and then Swing Big for 10. I think it's important that we lead with Riled Up. Uzuri would be hard-pressed to block Swing Big for 11, but it is doable if she played 2 D-Reacts and a 3-block that does keep her alive. I want to keep her off of the Quicken, effectively. And I don't believe it matters as far as breakpoints or sequencing, whether we lead with swing big or end with swing big. But we'll end with swing big. Uzuri is going to give us multiple cards in order to prevent the damage from Riled Up and Mandible Claw. And at this point, unless Uzuri has a defense reaction in arsenal and in hand and gives us her third card, there's no way she gets Quicken here. Only blocking for 7 and not playing the D-React means Uzuri goes to 1 and just passes the turn, which tells us that the card in her arsenal does not cost 0 because she didn't use it on her last turn. We are expecting that it is not a defense reaction, which makes sequencing on this turn pretty easy. We know we're going to attack with Enlightened Strike. We know we're going to give it Go Again, and we know we're going to bottom Bear Fangs or Pack Hunt because we need our Mighty Windup to pay for the follow-up to E-Strike. E-Strike for 6 Go Again, Bear Fangs for 8 is more damage than E-Strike for 6 Go Again, Pack Hunt for 6. But Pack Hunt limits Uzuri's blocking options. There is a weird chance that Uzuri drew 2 defense reactions this turn. If she gets to block the E-Strike for 6 and the Bear Fangs for 8, then she lives through the turn, and who knows, maybe we stumble on our next turn and somehow Uzuri takes the win. But if we are anticipating that this card in Uzuri's arsenal is not a defense reaction, E-Strike for 6 takes 2 cards out of Uzuri's hand. Pack Hunt banishes one of the cards Uzuri could block with, and now there is no single card in Uzuri's deck that keeps her alive through Pack Hunt for 6. And that should just win us the game. And that is in fact the case. See that Uzuri was holding Looking for Scrap in hand and had a Surgical Extraction in arsenal. And so that is the game. Fairly close game, as it so happens. Luck definitely broke on our side. We had a good Blood Rush turn. We were able to effectively play around Uzuri's reactions. Our Scowling Flesh Bag was pretty effective. And Uzuri just happened to not have the Shred in Arsenal again. I think it's unlikely that they will have Shred in Arsenal, but it is something to consider. And of course, Uzuri having just won the Pro Tour, we are going to need to deal with a second assassin on the scene. I think Kayo is favored into Uzuri. I think the fact that we get powerful 2-card hands is very strong against Assassin, and unlike New, we are able to much more confidently block with our cards rather than just letting New hit us and hope that we can mitigate the damage somehow. So I feel good about this matchup, but definitely get your practice in now. I hope you enjoyed this game. I hope you learned something. If so, be sure to assault and batter that like button. My comments are always open for any questions or feedback. If you haven't already done so, please consider a YouTube subscription. It's free, it helps me out a lot. I have a Patreon, I have a Twitter, links to those socials are in the video description below. And until the next time I see you on Daily FaB Gameplay, take care.